right, I'm Nathan Broderick with the company AI Vector, and we're an AI business integration company. We specialize in helping businesses bring AI into your organization, and we help you identify the spots that you need AI and help you integrate it.
And I'm Nicholas Williams. I'm the VP of software for Devio. We're a blockchain services company, and we do a lot of different things with that technology.
All right, so we're going to talk about datafication, and we're going to talk about the ethical, the privacy concerns, and security practices that we should use in that as well. So, first off, what is datafication?
So datafication is a term that got coined around 2013 or so, and it's just this act of trying to collect as much data as possible to create big data sets for analysis and information gathering and predictive analysis, really. So when you talk about big data, datafication is the input to that process.
Yeah, and from what he said, in layman's terms, I like to think of it as you put all your data in one big database, and you break it down into chunks you can look at and see in relevant areas. So pretty much every single company uses some form of data in their environments. All the big ones, you want to see as much as you can, dealing with your sales channels, and you want to see revenue. You want that as real time as you can possibly get most of the time. And the bigger the company, the faster you want to see that revenue. So that's where datafication comes in. So the first, we're going to cover two points of datafication first. So we're going to cover tokenization, dealing with the blockchain, and then we'll talk about AI datafication and how that comes into play. So,
as we were talking about this prior to this chat, the tokenization is a heavily used term in the blockchain industry, but it's not really specific to that. That is kind of the act of chunking the data into relevant, discrete containers, tokens. And AI does a lot of the same thing. So if you have a piece of data with several fields, like a relation, that often could be thought of as a token, and those pieces of data move together wherever they are in the system. You can talk about the AI context.
I'll cover the AI side of it. Like's been covered in other meetings. It's taking your data and it's bringing it all in. It's bringing it all and then training the model based off the data. So it just depends on the format you bring it in, the type of data you bring in. Will change the way the model functions. So when you look at bigger models out there, for example, ChatGPT or Gemini or any of these models, they bring in a lot of data from the outside world, place it all together, they scrub it, they change it the way they want it to look, and respond. And then after that, they build the model and then make that available to us. So it's really nice somebody's got that much computing power out there, but. That brings up what it is. So let's talk about datafication and what are some good uses of datafication? What are some things we can do with it?
Yeah. It's really just a big set of data to analyze and make predictions about the future. That's really what they're doing, trying to identify trends before they happen, and trying to influence customers to, make decisions so they can sell advertising for more money. And ultimately it's trying to influence customers to buy things is usually the end game there. And with systems like ChatGPT and stuff, it's trying to suck up as much data as they can scrape from the public realm. As we were talking about before, when that data is perceived as public, I think that's not as big a deal. But when you get into zones where the perception is the data is only shared amongst friends, like in a social media network or something, then it's a little more ethically questionable if that data should even be used.
Yeah, and that comes into datafication privacy. I think is if you publish something embarrassing out there in the public space, well, ChatGPT will sometimes have that scraped in there. You can ask questions. One example was a doctor that was using ChatGPT, and he put in his patient's data, and all of a sudden, people could query about that customer after the next training iteration came around, and they were able to see stuff about that customer. Pretty bad. That broke the private. That's privacy is a big deal, especially there. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do we maintain that privacy? Richard touched on in the last talk, data cleansing. You don't want to let that data get back into the training model, especially personally identifiable information. That's a special class of data that is about a specific individual. If you could identify someone from that data, that's bad.
So coming down to talking about scrubbing data. So we built the model, and it had a customer named Vinny in it, and he just kept being repeated. He hadn't been scrubbed from the data, and when customers would ask questions like "What's my name?" it would say, "Hey, Vinny," and it would act really funny. And other times it would put in information about Vinny that luckily he didn't have his last name in there, but it would do that occasionally, and that's part of what we had to be careful with the data. We had to be more careful about the scrubbing of information as we were pulling it in for the different people and the different models that we were building out. In terms of case studies, we're going to talk about and discuss something about called contact tracing. So we're going to discuss that one. Yeah.
Well, yes, that's something we were involved in during the pandemic with COVID. There were certain situations where people couldn't. There's industries where you just can't work from home. You have to be in person. It's essential. It's got to keep going. Healthcare, for example, is the big one, obviously. But so we worked on a contact tracing system where people in certain manufacturing facilities and things and offices would wear little tracking devices that weren't actually tracking where they were. It just was a device that sent out pings, and if it hit another device, that would ping it back, and you would know that person was within a few feet of someone else. And so each one only had its information available to it. From that interaction between them, we generate a hash, which is just kind of a random string of information that doesn't really have any particular data in it. If someone was sick, they could mark that they got sick, and it would flag all those hashes of their interactions as being infected. And so the other person on the other side of it could pull from that list and see if they have any matching hatches to those, they know they were exposed. And so they would get to go home for a few days, make sure they didn't get sick. Now, from our point of view, it was very private. There was no way to tell from the hash, and the company, none of the blockchain, the centralized system or decentralized parts of it, had no way of knowing who the people involved were. But in most cases, the employees using the system still didn't trust it. They didn't feel really comfortable. It's kind of hard to explain how it works and why your information is still private in that situation. So those projects weren't continued very long, but they were potentially helpful at the peak of the pandemic. That process of hashing data is very good for privacy, because then if you keep the data with the client or the customer, they know their data, it's theirs. They are maintaining their own data, and they can check if the hash matches their data, but you can't go the other way. The important thing to know about a hash is the one-way function. It only goes one direction. So if you have the data, you can figure out if it matches, but you cannot go from the hash back to the data. And so that's very useful for keeping things private and giving the customer control over their own data. Yeah.
Is that like it's illustrating an ID of the person's data? So
Not even. It's different from an ID. So a hash is just a string manipulation function.
I mean, like, if once you do that, I think it's shot it says over the data. So
Yep.
you use the same hash.
Correct.
So you can always query the data based on that hash.
Only if you have the data.
Only if you have the data.
Yeah, and that's the key to it is we keep the data in the client with the customer. No, we never transmit the data at all. We only transmit the hashes.
So why was it so complex to explain this to an average person?
Indirection, I'd say we didn't get a chance to like communicate to them directly. It was, us communicating to their managers, there's this whole chain of people in the middle. So I'm sure through the telephone process, things got a little miscommunicated.
Yeah, and I can see where that would be a huge problem. I don't know if I'd trust. I mean, part of it, whether they were communicated or not, I'd be, hey, we're going to track you. Can you just wear this little device or put it on your phone? I'd be like, no. So I think there's some privacy concerns right there in general, and I think that's
it
up to the
highlights how
company.
important the
So,
perception is of
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
Even if you do have kind of rigorous privacy, you have to feel like you do before you're comfortable.
Yeah, so that's where, I don't know, contact tracing would be an interesting one. Reminds me of web cookies. So companies use web trackers to be able to track you online. So they track where you've been, what sites you visited, and it's called a web tracker. It's a cookie. So you don't know it's going there if you don't have some app which deletes it in that. And then companies can gather that data and information and pull that back. And they know exactly how to advertise to you. And if it gets in the wrong hands, how to attack you, and which sites you've been on, and that sort of thing. So it can also be a really big security hazard for a person who gets a tracker, especially like a CEO or or somebody like a sysadmin or somebody in the company. They could be tracked and hacked, and that's where big data comes in. People are looking for these metrics, and they're looking for these things to be able to hack somebody.
Yeah, and there's one company in particular that's been really innovative in very ethically questionable ways in that web tracking, and it's Facebook. Even if you're logged out of Facebook, you can have trackers. They know every website you visit because every website that has that little Facebook, thumbs up button has the other side of that tracker, and it'll register that you were there. And on top of that, they sell data that I think because you're logging into it and it's mostly your friends and family and stuff, it doesn't feel public. So I think that perception that data, is not public makes it less ethical to sell that. And I guess going on from that, we were talking before, to the extent that data has value, why are customers not realizing that value themselves? What's cheaper than free? Getting paid to do something, right? So if my data is that valuable, and I'm not saying the big data services can't take a chunk of that and still make a profit, but why do average consumers not get any kickback on that? Any benefit directly? You have a question, Ty?
Yeah. So just looking at the use case here, did you guys ever consider using like facial recognition and AI to do the tracking?
Do we ever consider using facial recognition and AI for tracking?
We talked about that.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. Now, we use it for different purposes. So I think it's how you're using the facial
I meant
tracking
for the contact.
Oh, for the contact tracing?
Oh.
That would be difficult. The technology we had available wasn't really designed for that because we were doing a lot of IoT integrations, so we didn't really have cameras or anything integrated with the system to do that. That might work potentially. In fact, we've looked at using facial recognition for multi-factor. It's something you are. But again, the key is you don't store a bunch of, and I guess the AI has a train on a bunch of pictures of your face, but you try not to persist a bunch of pictures of your face.
You could hash the picture.
You hash them, exactly. So as long as you can converge on some kind of hash generated from your picture, then it works really well.
Going based off that, I don't know if you guys have gone on those people search sites where they gather all the data of people, and you can put in your name, and they can tell you your phone number, your address, and everything. So I started messing with these a while ago. So I put a picture of a bunny in my Facebook profile for about 5 months, and then went on those and searched for him, and it had the picture of the bunny. So it's something that you can kind of, if you put in the wrong information, if you do things like that, it'll catch it online too. And I think that's the best defense sometimes against datafication if you're trying to combat it. internally with companies, now here's some good examples of datafication. I think we can get into that. Obviously, for companies, you want to know revenue. So there are a number of ways you can tackle bringing in all that data. Or, in my example, I'd help with contracts. So you have 5 million contracts you look at. It's impossible to go down that database with one person and check everything. So you have to be able to split that out in certain ways, dump it in databases, scrape it out, put it in, or train AI on it and bring that in. So there's a number of uses for that database and the way that we can look at the data. But yeah, what are some ways you've seen that are good for datafication?
So it's really the best uses are for analyzing trends and predicting what's going to happen. And for that, you don't need personally identifiable information. Like in your data cleansing portion of your process, you should just remove all of that because it doesn't really benefit the AIs or the analytics models at all, knowing who. It doesn't really matter specifically who wants to buy a car next year. What's more important for the company is that this many people in aggregate want to buy a car next year. That's the really, I think, valuable piece of information for production planning and things like that. And going back to the thing with facial recognition and personal privacy, I'm not doing it right now with this conference exactly. It's a special situation, but I try to limit how much I have stills of my face on the internet. The facial recognition technology is very good nowadays. If you want to avoid someone being able to use your face for things that you have not approved of them, with generative AI and things like that, you need to limit how many examples of your face they have to train on. And the only way to do that is not have a lot of pictures out there. So obviously if you're famous, it's impossible.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a strategy for that. I tag my father.
You tag your father.
Yeah. On Facebook.
Yeah, so it's like putting the bunny image. I know a lot of people have their pets instead of pictures of themselves. That's a good strategy. And yeah, I mean, if to the extent that big data is kind of scraping everything they can, I feel like it's only fair to pollute the stream on the input. And maybe they can detect it and filter it out. Maybe they can't. But mixing up that metadata is and putting wrong tags. I don't see any problem with that. It seems like a fair response.
Yeah. So again, that actually leads us into the next area, which is a hot topic right now. Has to deal with artistry, and ChatGPT, generative AI, and what are the privacy concerns behind that, and how we should treat that. So my own take on it is AI's a tool. It knows everything about programming, and it's even pulled programming from places like Stack Overflow. Mm-hmm. It's pulled it from Reddit. It's pulled it from random places on the internet. So it's actually pulled all that information, and then it's been trained over time, gotten smarter and smarter as people use it. So it's even been trained off of what people have used it for internally, right? Mm-hmm. So as a developer, we already use Stack Overflow. We already used all those utilities. So for us, it's just something that's even enhancing our work more. Mm-hmm. We also know that all these utilities are as dumb as a 3-year-old when you start using it for a while. Anyone in programming knows if you put in a big page of data in there and you're trying to debug code, it gets it wrong about 50% of the time. If you put in a big code segment, it's wrong. Mm-hmm. And it'll even give you worse code than you had before. So that's something that isn't and that's with good prompting, by the way. So there are a lot of things that we need to do to improve those tools, and we hope they get there over time, and it will really help us out. But as developers, we're not as concerned as, oh, somebody stole my work. It's more the idea that comes out. Now, the artist side of it, well, they have proprietary information. They're pictures that were uploaded, and then the AI pulls in that information. So the question is this a good thing? Do we need to protect that, or what do we do about that?
Yeah, and that one's tough. We were talking about that beforehand, and it's a really hard thing to regulate. I mean, you could theoretically do something like GDPR where you an artist could require the AI to forget about all their art in the training model, but the AI with the right prompting could still converge on something that's very much like their voice if someone was trying to. You could tell ChatGPT to forget about DALL-E and remove every token related to DALL-E. It would still know about like surrealism, and would be able to still generate, I think, similar things that appear to have the voice of that artist. And so then you get into this kind of cat and mouse game of detecting what's AI generated and avoiding false positives in that detection. In my opinion, it's very difficult. I think it's not that difficult yet, but it is going to get harder to do that sort of detection work.
Yeah.
No,
question? Yep.
one of the larger, a very large space that I'm a part of is in the entertainment industry.
Mm-hmm.
So I know everyone's heard about the strikes and everything that the actors had gone through.
Mm-hmm.
And as a SAG actor and producer, that was a huge conversation of dissension, because you have the security issues, but you also have where the studios want to exhibit some creativity by saying, hey, let's advance this technology by taking, let's say, Nick and Nathan, and taking their image, creating avatars, and creating movies from these images, and which they are already doing to some degree right now. They're just making these things up. But if I'm able to take your likeliness and do that, then I'm able to now create other films without getting this actor's permission. I'm able to take features from an actor and put different features on them, maybe make them nude, or maybe make them something else, and the general public have no way to see it. So it's really the wild, wild west when it comes to that, like everything
Very
else
much
when
so.
it comes to generative AI and where we are in our space right now.
Yeah.
But it's extremely concerning for a lot of groups.
And I think everyone agrees that, if you're taking somebody's face and you're pulling it in and making something that's fake about it, there's some impersonation laws that are already out there that really should be used to cover some of these things that are already happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they don't cover them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they need to, obviously there's some things that should be updated in the law to cover some of that. I think artists should be compensated for any amount of time
They
they're
should
on
get
the screen.
royalties for that, yeah.
And if they're dead, it should go to the company that, that's a hard one. I don't know. But I have it's kind of
immortality
creepy.
of a sort. Yeah, if like they've done those hologram shows with Tupac and stuff like that. So I don't know what the future holds
They
there.
got Michael Jackson down the street.
Yeah, they got Michael Jackson down the street here right now, and it's like, how long has he been dead? It's a brave new world there for sure. And yeah, I agree. I think the estate or the individual, if they're living, should have the right to demand that their likeness not be used for things that they don't approve of.
Imagine a playground for the developers, right? Like that's a huge sandbox and playground.
Yeah.
And so, like you mentioned, Nathan, like
Yep.
the developer is like, this is sweet. I get to exercise that. But then on the other side of it, of course.
Well, I look at it even from, this is my perspective on the artists as well. Why aren't they using AI to enhance their work just the way that developers use it to enhance theirs? So I think that that's something that needs to be explored too. It's not, I use it to enhance my artwork. I can't draw worth anything. So it's really nice to have artists like my wife and other people who help me in the company who can draw and do that sort of thing. I'm more a technical type person, and I use AI to make good stuff. But an artist who can already draw really well should be able to make something phenomenal. And that's what I've seen it do most of the time, is built that as a tool. And we need to start maybe looking at those industries and saying, hey, use this tool and build something better than you had before that no one else can do. And make better stuff that we can all do that. Maybe that's one way to solve it. The other is changing regulations a little bit to match the new world.
And they have, which is a really good point you make. The industry has, when you have purists who are writers. They don't want the influence of any of that, or or artists that are drawing or painting.
Mhm.
They don't want any of that influence. They just want to,
Yeah.
you know,
From the heart,
have that
yeah.
connection to the work. However, we do use it for auditioning, right? You might have an avatar, you might have something in front of you, deadpan, reading something to you, so you can read opposite someone. So it is being used to help the artist in whether it's music, whether it's acting, or any type of conceptualization of large amounts of, or large pools of creativity. It is being used in that way.
Okay.
So,
That's great.
Yeah,
And
just
yeah,
spot
I
on
think
with that. Just
the
spot on.
best use of it is when we use it to augment our skills,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
AI and ML should not be replacing people as much as it's
Absolutely.
augmenting them.
Yeah.
And you know, I could use the chess world actually has kind of an easy analogy. You know, it's been a while now that machine learning can beat even grandmasters at chess, but they don't tend to beat grandmasters with AI on their side. So, you know, the human augmented with the machine, you get best of both worlds. And I think that's really what we need to strive for on the positive side is, yeah, augmenting our skills. You know, the actor should still be the one emoting, and it should use their face, even if it's like modified in certain ways, but they need to be expressing the art and the human emotion of it.
Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of like Star Wars with Princess Leia there. That was she was back in Star Wars 9, I think, or 8. I can't remember.
Oh,
the
yeah,
one.
after she was dead, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't know how I felt about that one.
Yeah, that scene was weird.
A little different, but I definitely there needs to be more thought and discussions over that kind of thing.
I think they did it really well with the other guy, though. Didn't one of the male actors died too?
Oh, yeah.
And it was very smooth the way they did it.
So Nate, this is the second time you mentioned the dark space, man. First,
I was just gonna ask if Star Trek people are Trekkies, then what are Star Wars people?
I was wearing a Star Wars shirt when I first
Ewokis?
came in. So.
No.
they're just Star Wars, I think. There's no nickname for Star Wars.
Oh, well, thank you for that interesting fireside chat, gentlemen. We appreciate your insight.